A lot of people seem to find museums as elitist, stifling places. This museum, unlike some other museums, is often quiet. We don't have a ton of visitors, and so when students and other visitors come to the museum, it's just quiet, which almost makes it a little uncomfortable for a lot of people in the museum. I also think that people in general don't quite know what to do in an art museum especially. They kind of glance at artworks very quickly, but they don't really engage with it. They may view the label, read the label, but they end up spending more time reading the label than they actually do looking at the artwork. And I know there's studies saying that people spend like an average of like 1 second looking at art. So it's difficult because there's not that much interaction with art, so that brings up a lot of challenges.
I do find art spaces intimidating sometimes, even as a professional. I like context. I want to know the stories. I want to know about the people behind the objects. So for me, I have a really hard time, particularly in sort of the mid-20th century modern art approach to having a white cube or a white box where it's a room devoid of anything and you're there to contemplate or appreciate the aesthetics of the object. Because I want to know, who made the object.
I do get intimidated by the space. The first time I went to the Met, I haven't been to New York many times, and so the first time I went to the Met, I was already working in museums, and I was overwhelmed at how big the place was. I wasn't sure where I was supposed to buy my ticket, and then once I had my ticket, where I was supposed to go next, and then I couldn't find where the modern art was. And I think those experiences for me are good, so that I remember, because since I am in a museum, the same museum day after day after day, it becomes a very comfortable space for me, and I know where everything's at. So it is good for me to be intimidated by the space again, so I remember what it's like for many other visitors to my museum as well as to other museums.
There's sort of a range of things I've gotten from people. There are, visitors to museums who absolutely do not want to have to read things, right? They don't want to be approached with a book on legs. So they don't want lots of text, but they still want somebody to help them come up with optional interpretations or come up with narratives for particular objects. So the feedback has been that people are looking for a variety of different experiences in the same space, and that they tend to bring they have lots of different kinds of expectations.
The museum is trying to break that quietness of the gallery, and what I really enjoy doing is actually having conversations about artwork with other people. And the way I do that is I don't view myself as one to convey a lot of information about the art, so I don't become a lecturer, but rather one who facilitates a conversation about art and help people engage with it through dialogue.
Obvious things that have been done are to put a coffee shop right in a museum, or to the big thing now in New York art museums is to have fine dining, right? We have Wolfgang Puck in the art museum. So there are a number of ways of providing sort of ancillary services that might draw people into the museum who would not otherwise come there. And I think some of the solutions are already enacted in other ways too, in terms of having social events, right? Having a wine and cheese, having a dance, having various kinds of events that draw people into the art museum.
I mean, some of the things that I do, and I know other museum educators do, is we try to offer different activities within a museum so that people realize that museums are not just these stuffy places that are quiet, to kind of break this idea of the sanctuary of a museum. And that's why we have yoga and dancing and open mic nights, just to show that museums are interested in all forms of creative expression, and can be a place not only for people to look, but actually to create and express themselves as well. And just to kind of break down that the traditional idea of museums as kind of like these stifling, quiet places.
Find a map, right? When you first walk into the art museum, see if you can figure out what the layout is, figure out how the museum's organized. Is it following sort of art history canons, right? So you have art of Europe, or is it geography, so you have art of Europe and art of Asia and so on.
Sometimes they don't want to go on a tour of a museum because it seems like too much like school. And a lot of people go to museums as a place, it's kind of a social place to go. And so going on a tour seems kind of boring, but I think it's actually kind of the best thing to do.